Welcome to another episode of the Tech Your Business podcast. And today we'll be talking about mobile apps. The Tech Your Business podcast is a podcast where we show you different ways where you can use technology to stay ahead of the competition. And depending on the kind of business you have, having a mobile app is one way to stay ahead of others in the same industry as you are. And today to talk mobile apps with us is Dan Hafner. So welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right. So my first question, I'll just go straight to the point. So why should businesses consider having their own mobile app?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of considerations, and again, it depends on what type of business you have, what industry you're in, what stage your business is in, right? But it just the idea of having software overall. Maybe it's not particularly a mobile app, but just any kind of custom software that you might need to level up your operations or use as kind of a back end systems type of what am I trying to say? The back end systems automation or things like
Yeah.
that, right? Because the technology's gotten to the point in this world where I think and maybe we'll get into this later. It can replace some mundane tasks, right? It can kind of serve as almost another employee in a sense. So there's a cost benefit analysis to those types of things, right? But I think about specifically inside of the conversation of mobile technology. I mean, what I think I don't even know the latest stats, but most of web traffic happens on phones, right? It's a mobile first world. So if you just have some kind of website out there that you're just trying to reach people on a desktop or a laptop, you're missing out on most of what's available out there. So yeah, there's lots and lots and lots of different reasons, industry wide, specific wide, why you should do that.
Okay. So for some people now, they would say, trying to reach people on mobile phones, why don't they just have maybe a mobile version of their website or a responsive version? So is there anything that's having an app, any advantage here having an app would give them as against just having a mobile version of their website?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to have a mobile friendly website. That's definitely the first thing to consider, right? So I think the good comparison to talk about inside of this is I always tell people, websites they're kind of like a passive thing, right? It's your business card, it's your online business card that you can kind of go out there and promote and push people into, and collect leads through, and all that type of stuff. But that is what it is. It's more of a passive. It's a receiving end of that marketing channel, right? People have to actually find that in order to engage with you and to connect with you. Um, the thing is, if you get people inside of your own app, whether you have a food delivery service or home design service or whatever it is, if you are able to get people inside of your application, you can outreach to people. It's almost like an email marketing type of tool where you
Hmm.
can do that outbound marketing. You can't really do that with a website. A website doesn't have the ability to reach out there into the world and to grab you, right? Like whereas like an app, we all get those notifications on your phone, and then you click and then it takes you somewhere, right? So it's a way to kind of outreach and kind of do that outbound type of marketing or advertising in that way, and that can obviously lead to additional leads, additional sales, all those types of things. So it just kind of offers a little bit of a different way to do that. And then again, it goes back to considering, is it, a lot of people don't really even end up going the native route if they have a local business or if they do these types of things, unless there's a certain use case for it. So that's kind of where I come in with a lot of people and kind of say, okay, you have this idea for this app, but maybe just going in a mobile direction is probably better for you. Or sometimes there's people that are like, no, you actually could definitely use the app store, the marketing. And that's another reason why, is because on the app stores, on Apple apps and or the Apple App Store, Google Play, there is a massive, massive opportunity to grow because the audience there is so amazingly big. I mean, there's like half a billion downloads per day of applications. So I mean, there's a massive audience that you can tap into for almost nothing to grow your list, to grow your community, to grow your people. And it's completely unknown to most people.
Amazing. And I think apart from that, so having an app is probably like carrying your customers' phones, like them carrying your business everywhere they go, compared to going to a website or something. So
Yep.
there's one thing that puts a lot of business owners away from building mobile apps, and that is they believe that building a mobile app is very expensive. They believe that building a mobile app is a very complicated process. So, what would you say about that?
Yeah, very good question. So, it can be. I won't. Don't get me wrong. It can be a very, very expensive and um, excruciating thing to do. I mean, I've always noticed when people go into the world of software that never have been in the world of software, they find out very quickly how complicated the world of software can be and how difficult it can actually be. But that being said, that's kind of why I went the direction in my career and in my world that I did, was because I was in that position. I wanted to build this application. I didn't have a business at the time. It was actually the app was going to be the business, but I did not have a whole lot of money sitting around. I was, this was 7 or 8 years ago, and I had gotten quotes for people to build this application for me that were in the $250,000 range, $500,000 range, and I was like, okay, cool story. So what I found was it's not really a new technology, but it's a very interesting way of looking at it and approaching things, and it's called a no code or a low code approach, which dramatically can reduce the price or the cost of developing this type of software, because it's more of a democratization. You really don't have to know how to code. You don't have to spend months and months and months and months paying someone to build this type of thing, because you can either learn to do it yourself or hire someone to do it for a lot cheaper than a normal agency that's going to code things and do all kinds of high level type of things. So basically, the no code or the low code approach allows for a lower cost and a quicker time to market. Which is changing the game for a lot of people, because you used to think that this type of stuff was out of reach. Like, well, I want to build this custom CRM for my thing because I don't really like Salesforce, or this other one doesn't quite
Yeah.
work right. But that's also going to cost me $1 million, right? Well, it doesn't have to be like that anymore. There are ways you can build this stuff for, I don't know, like a few $1,000s or something, or a few weekends of your time if you really put yourself to figuring it out. So that was game changing for me back in the day when I was starting, and I've seen it be game changing for people I work with too.
Okay. So now you said the no code or low code version is where you use minimal code in building these apps, and you said it also it reduces the costs and reduces the time to market for the app. But now, when you look at the apps developed with these no code or low code tools, what's the what would I say? What are the possibilities? What are the limitations? What's the quality compared to apps built using the traditional approach?
Yeah, I'll save some people some time here, because when I went down the rabbit hole, I found these questions. I kind of had to answer them myself because I didn't really know the answers to these. So if you start going down, okay, how can I use a no code platform to build what I want to build? The some of the things, exactly like you said, you're going to run into limitations of, well, it doesn't quite do what I want it to do, which was the case for me. I had a running and a fitness application that I wanted to build, and I was trying to fit it into these no code tools. And with the features that I wanted to have in there, the platform just didn't offer them, right? Like they
Oh.
just didn't have a way to do GPS or, animations or different things. And I was talking, at platform after platform after software, looking at these. So you will find that. Now, I will say there are a lot more that are coming along in the new era of what, since really 2020. That offer a hell of a lot more flexibility and a lot more features, and so you can I mean, the possibilities are almost endless of what you can do, right? So that's kind of gone away. Like, obviously there's still limitations to anything, but there's a lot more room. And then, that's the beauty of it, is now we have this really, really cool tool of AI that has come into the world. I mean, it's been in the world for a very long time, but like come
Yeah.
into our worlds recently, as a major player. So you I mean, your imagination is kind of the only limit that now is there, because what can you prompt something like a Chat GPT or a Gemini to come up with an idea for you, to improve something for you, to validate something in the market for you, to do those types of initial things. And then I love using a lot of designing tools with AI to say, hey, I need a screenshot of what my ice cream parlor app might look like,
Mm.
for a rewards section or type of, and then boom, it spits it right out. Right. So it's really your imagination has kind of become the new limit with the tools that are out there and that are available. And it's a really, really fun world to be in. It really, really is.
Amazing. So I think you've answered some questions I know would be on a lot of people's mind concerning app development. Now let's go back to where I should have started. I know you touched on this a bit about your journey starting this about 7 or 8 years ago. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got to this point?
Yeah. So yeah, going back to that, I was working as I never wanted to be in the technology field, to be honest with you. I really wanted to be a teacher. That was my initial thing I went to school for. I was going to be a history teacher, coach football is
Wow.
what I was going to do. So here I am, but so I've been working in a help desk position. I got a job, kind of doing, just kind of learning like how to reset passwords for people. Like I just dove into learning technology, had no idea what I was doing. Eventually, I got this role as a quality assurance tester. So I was actually working on a for a big contractor where we were actually building and testing web applications for the U.S. military, which was really, really cool job. So I wasn't actually in there coding things. I was trying to break what the coders had
Hmm.
built. Right, I was like the tester. Like, hey, you built
Yeah.
this. It's cool, but I broke it. So fix it. That was a job I had for a while. So that was my introduction into software. Um, and I kind of had this entrepreneurial bug bite me, back then as well too. And my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, we were kind of traveling every few years with her job because she's in the medical field. So it was like medical school, residency, all this different stuff. So we were moving all the time. So it naturally got a little bit difficult to hold down a job. So I decided to just try to give it a go. I had this idea for this running and fitness app that I wanted to build. And I didn't let anything stop me. I didn't know how to code, and I didn't have the money to pay someone to, 100 grand to build this thing.
Yeah.
So I finally figured out how to actually build it, and I brought it to life. I didn't have any AI or anything like that back. This was like 2017, 2018, something like that. So I didn't even know what I was getting into, and ended up building this thing. It turned into be very successful, and it was really a learning experience, and that taught me that, hey, I actually built a skill for myself, um, that I could transfer and go and actually. Then I had people approach me to say, hey, on my podcast, I was like, hey, could you do this for me? I have this idea, and that kind of light bulb went off of like, oh, I could get paid to do this, and thus Dapper Mobile Apps, Dapper No Code now, was born. So that was kind of my evolution into this. And I said, well, hey, if this is something that is in demand and that people would need and would pay for, why don't I just do that as well? So that's kind of been the mix of it. So now it's both a agency of building and launching and maintaining no code software and apps for people, and then I've kind of gotten back into building my own apps on the side as well too. So that's been kind of the evolution of it over the years.
Oh, amazing. So now for businesses who have apps, can you share maybe a success story of a small business that maybe saw growth, saw an increase in efficiency or something because they had an application built for them?
Yeah, I got a couple. I mean, one recently we built for a ice cream shop, which has been pretty amazing because they needed some kind of. They didn't really want to use any of the cookie cutter ordering tools that were out there. They kind of needed something custom. So I got to get the latest stats on that, but I know that their ordering has gone up quite a bit. But it's also kind of the end of the year too, where it's October, where we're
Yeah.
um, when we're recording this, so it's not like the heat of summer, so it's hard to know like what the real bump was. But then there was a another company, small company in Texas. She is a animal vet. Well, she or not an animal vet. She's a animal chiropractor. Sorry, I hope she doesn't listen to this because that would be insulting. I'm sorry. Um, she does both humans and animals, right? So she does a
Oh.
lot of horses, like actual chiropractic, type of work.
Mm.
And she had this very antiquated system of they would have to get the vets sign off on a form before she could actually do anything to a animal, and
Mm.
then it had to be either take a picture of it or faxed back and forth, and it was just this really weird crazy system that they had going. So what we built was a kind of a customer facing app where they can contact their vet, have the vet sign off on it. She gets notified as the chiropractor. Boom, everything works seamlessly between all three parties, right? Because you had
Wow.
her as the chiro, you had the vet, and then you have the client, and it just kind of worked all seamlessly so they can manage their it's almost like an app for your vet, but it's for your animal chiropractor, right?
Yeah.
So that has really turned around her efficiency as far as because she travels a very long way to some of these places, and Texas is a massive state, so it really has helped her with getting more appointments when she goes to one area than the others and different things so she can group that type of stuff. So I don't have any of the numbers on what her revenue bounce or anything like that has been,
Yeah.
but I know it's she's definitely I think on her site she has one of the videos, but it like really has increased her um, not only her business but as a secondary thing, it really increased her clients experience with her
Mm.
business as well, which is another thing that people really don't really think about. It's like if your customers are going to have a better experience with you because of this application or this tool that you're building, I mean, what's that worth to you? You know? So that's one thing that people don't often think about till I present that question to them. So, yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So now for a lot of apps, a lot of them have a lot of features. I know someone talked to me about an idea I had recently, and I was talking to him about this. So a lot of people want to put a lot of features into their apps, and these end up being clunky, difficult to use, and cool. So how for apps like that, how do you balance them being user friendly and still being feature rich at the same time?
it's a very good question. So, when you're starting something out, it's very easy to get very caught up in building all these features because it's in your mind of like, oh my gosh, it could do this, it could do that. How
Yeah.
cool would this be? The key thing right there is there's no user feedback from that, right? There's no
Mhm.
actual like just because you think it's cool doesn't mean it's solving an actual problem for the person, right? Or like why am I using this app? Why do I use something like a Facebook? Why do I use something like a YouTube, right? And it's because I have a certain problem I'm trying to solve or a certain thing I'm trying to do or a need I'm trying to some of these social media ones, that's a bad example because you're just trying to get a dopamine fix, but you know what I mean. So really I walk people through of like, okay, do you have feedback as if this is going to be useful? And it's not just somebody saying it's useful. We actually look at analytics on the back end and see, okay, on this page we built this page to do this thing. Well, it's only gotten like you know 10 views in the last week. Like there's clearly nobody using this feature. Why do we
Yeah.
need it? Right. So yeah, there's almost like I've never really come up with a word for it, but there's like a logical methodology that I've kind of gone through with people of like, okay, what's the first thing? Like you need to be able to sign up and log into the application. Okay, let's build that first. Okay, then once you're there, what's the first thing that I need or that I'm expecting to be able to do? Okay, let's just work on that one thing and then we'll go to okay, now that I've had this, I've almost created this secondary thing of, well, I'd like to see the history of those things that I've done. Okay, now we do, so it's an art and a science for sure. The question that you have of how do you balance these things, because you have to be committed um, to creating and to continuing to create and iterate based on what your users and your customers need and want, not what you think is cool. That's the fatal flaw I see a lot. Yeah.
Amazing. So now for an app for a business, what are some key features that you feel an app for a business should have so that it's actually useful, it's actually valuable for that business, depending on the type of business that is.
Yeah, yeah. Again, depends on the type of business, but I think you know, and I guess it's kind of hard to answer that without having a specific one. But for example, like everything needs to have. I really really like any kind of useful application you use or software that you use usually has some kind of homepage dashboard
Hmm.
or some kind of quick view thing because nobody wants to kind of go through an app to kind of like you have to click 900 times to get to this one thing you saved or you found or something like
Yeah,
that's a bad user experience. So what I like to do a lot of times is right on that first page, there is a kind of a breakdown of, you think of something like, my wife and I, we use the HelloFresh type of stuff every once in a while. And, when you log into that, it's like the first thing, I don't have to click on anything else. It's like choose your meals, right?
yeah,
So I think the time to value is something that's really kind of more important to think about than like what specific features, because the features will like your users and you will determine what features are needed.
yeah.
And it's really more about like how can I remember one time I took a course when I was first starting this, and it's always stuck with me. The guy had talked about you should the time to value or the time to complete something in the application should take you less than 3 clicks. Like it should
Mm,
take you less than 3 taps or clicks to actually do something. Which, when you get into kind of more complex things like a CRM or an ordering app or something like that, you're kind of like, ooh, that's tough. But that's where the challenge comes in of like, okay, take the ice cream one, for example. How do I get to actually clicking the order button, like on an Amazon or whatever, in the fastest amount of time possible, right? I have to search, then I have to click into a thing, and then I have to add to cart and then check out, right? So maybe there's 4 or 5 steps,
yeah.
but in something like that, that's actually pretty efficient instead of, blah, 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 blah. So that's the framework I try to give people more often than like what feature should you specifically have. It's
Hmm.
how can you streamline this to be the time to value is quicker.
I think there was a website I logged into just recently. When you were talking about 3 clicks, I'm like, oh no, 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 this doesn't work for this because I had to click almost 10 times to get to
Yeah.
get to get
Yeah.
to what I needed. So now a lot of the business owners who you deal with, they obviously don't have a technical background. They don't know anything about coding or even no code or whatever. So how would you advise a person like that to effectively communicate their app idea with their developer?
Very good question. I mean, it again, it's different for every person because every person has different ways of communicating, and you could disc profile everybody or whatever you'd want to do. But there's a bunch of different things that I've tried, and I got to say, I don't really have the magic bullet for that. I've tried. Um, One thing I've found that works pretty well is we have a big assessment when somebody starts working with us, is like a big 30 question assessment, and it really gets their thoughts down of, okay, here's what the point of this is, here's who this is for, here's why we're doing this, here's the colors we want with it, the fonts, the type of feel we want with it. um, and a lot of times we'll just do we'll do idea brainstorming sessions, fleshing it out of just like, let's just brain dump what this thing is, because you can say, well, I want to build this cool like Upwork type of thing. Okay, well, that's very vague. Like what specifically do you want it to do, what problem, those types of things. So and then again, I would push people back into our new friends of ChatGPT, things like that, right? You can really, if you know how to ask questions, you can get very, very specific in communicating. Okay, here's what I'm trying to build. I don't have it do all the work. Obviously, you can't have. I mean, it's like having it write an email and then never changing it.
Yeah.
Like it's very, you know what I mean. So it does, but it can do a lot of work for you. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I would say. There's a mixture of things that I've seen over the years. But yeah, it's really kind of that's really more on someone like me to kind of get out of people to like, well, okay, what are you really trying to do here? So it's a tough one for sure.
Okay, so now let's say a business owner brings an app idea to you for their business. What would be your process of determining if that idea is a good idea or not?
Yeah, very good question. Do you have an idea by chance?
Uh, okay, let's say I have a furniture shop and I want an app for someone to order sofas, maybe take a photo of their house, um, try out the sofas, then order the sofas with the app. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Yeah, I just sometimes it's good to have examples to walk through these
Yeah,
questions instead of just going generic. So, okay, so in this example, what I would say is, okay, that's awesome. So you're kind of thinking maybe something that is a little bit more of an outreach type of tool to where even before they could come in, you could say, hey, what would this sofa? It's almost like an Amazon thing. Like, what would
yeah,
this look like in my room, or how would this work? You know. So that is a very interesting idea. Like that's something that you know a website might not really be able to do. Like there might be technology and tools out there that it could, but that is a very interesting idea of something that is okay. Just because you have that, it's like okay, that has app merits. If you're just like, well, I just need them to order online, it's like, well, there's a lot of other tools for that. You don't
yeah,
need an application for that. But this 3D view, this ordering, this you know what were we talking about, like kind of inventory management for your type
yeah.
of your back end things. There's definitely ways you can do that. So the next piece I would say, okay, so there's definitely a need verified there. Okay, so like boom, we got that. The next piece would be, is this something that is like mission critical to your business, or is it kind of like a nice to have? Because that actually makes a difference, because that also can drive timelines, that can drive costs, that can drive up, if somebody's like, I need to have this like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, like that's going to be hard to do, and it's going to cost you a lot of money, and whatever you do. But if it's like, no, I want to get this set up by 2025 or by 2026 to have like really change my type of ideas and the way that I process things, then okay, now we can actually go to the drawing board. We can take some time. We can flesh this idea out. We can do different things. So that's probably how I would process that inside of my mind, just for that specific example. Yeah.
Okay. So now, for a business owner who is convinced that they need an app for their business, what would you say the first step they should take would be?
Get feedback from any customers that you might
Mm,
have. Don't just keep it in your mind. A lot of people get scared that they're going to tell their idea and somebody's going to steal it. Oh no, the big bad wolf's going to come, right? That's not the case. I mean, so I always say this on every show I come on, I think, is there's no such thing as $1 million ideas, there's only $1 million execution. Okay, I'll say that again for
yeah.
you. There's no such thing as $1 million ideas, only $1 million execution for you guys in the cheap seats. Okay. So get feedback. Actually ask somebody. Send an email to your customer list, or go out and, God forbid, you actually talk to some people, right? See what, because that's not like always the best form of validation, because people like to be nice. Nobody likes to really, crap all over your idea or something like that. But it's very good, and it's better than maybe going straight to ChatGPT and saying, "Hey, is this a good idea?"
Yeah.
Because ChatGPT is a cheerleader. It's going to say that's a great idea, right? So get feedback. Get feedback from someone before you even seek someone out, or do anything, because you might find that you ask some people or you get feedback on things and they're like, I don't know, it's kind of a soft idea. Okay, now you can reiterate it. You can think it through. You can go ask a chat GPT of like, how can I make this better? Right. So that's my question. Get feedback, and don't worry about just um, people stealing your idea or losing that type of thing, because ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the execution that matters.
And I fully agree with that too. Execution is everything that matters. So now, for listeners who have listened so far, and we are getting to the end of this. We've talked about a lot of things concerning apps and app development and everything. For the listeners listening, is there anything you would like to leave them with? Maybe something I haven't asked about, but you feel would be important for them to know in this field of apps for businesses?
Um, I'd say with just one takeaway, one thing to remember, learn to leverage it. I think a lot of people are, especially in this topic of AI, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, it's going to ruin the world. It's going to take over things. It's going to do all this stuff. And I don't particularly subscribe to that line of thought in a lot of ways. But, you know, instead of waiting for, your to see a competitor using technology or using AI or using a new application, be proactive about it. Learn, like, educate yourself a little bit. Go learn something about it. Go attend a webinar or an event or anything. Because technology isn't going away. We're more and more and more technology centric society. So take the time to learn about it a little bit, because you never know when that one idea is just gonna somebody's gonna say something is gonna spark something. It's like, oh, that's the piece I've been looking for, to go and do this. So just dive into it. Don't be scared of it.
Amazing. So now for our audience, if they want to learn more about mobile app development, learn more about no code, or maybe connect with you, learn more about you, learn more about your services, or maybe work with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on LinkedIn is always one of the best ways to do that as well. And then if you want to kind of see a little bit more about the agency that we have going, it's dapperNoCode.com.
Okay, so
A lot of resources
LinkedIn.
there.
Yeah, so LinkedIn, that's your personal LinkedIn, right?
Yes, personal
Okay,
LinkedIn. Yep. And then dapperNoCode.com. We actually have a
locode.com.
very cool calculator that I always like to point people to, that will literally punch out a quote, a dollar amount quote down to the exact dollar of
Hmm.
what your idea might cost. So that's always a very cool thing that I think a lot of people find valuable.
Oh, amazing. So I think that the calculator would be on the screen in the show notes as well as your LinkedIn address so everyone can contact you and continue this conversation. Like I say, the conversations
Absolutely.
can last for hours if we let them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this. This was fun.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. So, for the listeners, did you learn anything today about app development? Did you learn something new about that app you've been holding out on developing? Have you been encouraged to launch it? If you have, if you've learned something new today, don't forget to share this episode with someone else who has the same thing, who would learn, who would benefit from learning the same thing that you did. And if you want to be the first person to know when we come out with new episodes like this that would help your business, that will show your business ways to stay ahead of the competition, don't forget to follow, like, share, and subscribe wherever you see Dan and I, wherever you're hearing us. We have over 100 episodes. We bring out an episode a week. So till next week, when we come out with a brand new episode, you have a lot to listen to. You have a lot to watch. Until then, keep learning, keep taking your business, and bye for now.